it occurred to me after I published the last video on is the Jaguar XK a future classic, it occurred to me that all I talked about were good things about the car. So, in the interest of good journalism, today I'm going to talk about the 5 things that I don't like about the Jaguar XK. So, number 5, the back seats. Now, I'm not expecting the back seats to be cavernous in a car like this, but in a 911, they're more usable than this car. In the Maserati Gran Turismo, they're a lot more usable than in this car. So I kind of have to wonder, like, why did they bother? The front seats actually touch the back seats. They are completely unusable, and it would be better if they had a partial shelf back there. It would at least be somewhat practical. I suspect it's probably something having to do with the insurance. The second, or number 4, is the gearing. First gear in this car is way too short, and so it makes the shifting from first to second when you're doing so in anger very uncomfortable. It's impossible to be smooth, so I typically start in second gear like I just did now. That said, the final drive is also too long. No, you're turning at maybe like 2,000 RPM at 70 miles an hour, and it makes the car slower than it has to be. Number 3, the Jaguar Brand. Now, this is a complicated one, because when I think of the Jaguar Brand, I think of the D-type Jaguars crossing the finish line in first place in the 1950s, and I think of the glitterati of the 1960s driving them, and I think about the 1980s and the conspicuous consumption and the XJS and how that perfectly represented that time and place. But lately, the Jaguar name has really kind of fallen out of favor. They haven't been doing much racing, or any racing at all. And just to give you an example in terms of public opinion, I was recently, shortly after buying this car, I was at a party and somehow word got around that I bought a new car, and somebody came up to me and said, "Oh, you bought a new car, what kind of car is it?" And I said, "Well, it's a Jaguar." And he took a step back and said, "Oh, that's strange." And I thought, strange? What's strange about that? Well, do people buy Jaguars now? I haven't heard somebody say that I bought a Jaguar in ages. And he's got a point. He had a point. It was like, well, who buys a Jaguar nowadays? Actually, not a lot of people. And I can look at that as a positive thing, because part of the reason why I went to Jaguar was because I had BMW after BMW, and I had a falling out with the dealership, and I got bored with the cars. But recently, Jaguar decided that they were going to announce that at some point in the future, I think it was 2027 or something like that, 2025 maybe, that they were no longer going to make gas engine vehicles. To which the buying public said, "I'm sorry, did you say something? We weren't listening." It's really a shame, because the passion and the history of this brand is really second to none. I mean, it's up there with Ferrari, but I think to some extent they've squandered it. Another problem that I have with the car is the sports mode. Right now this car is in sports mode, and it's nice because it holds it into the manual gear, and it won't shift over to automatic without your permission, as it would in normal mode. It's also supposed to stiffen the front suspension. Now, as near as I can figure, it is imperceptible, the difference between sport mode and regular mode in terms of damping in the front suspension. And I've run the codes, the system is working. So I'm not really sure what that's about, if it's maybe the age of the car. So that's a bit disappointing. The number 1 thing that's disappointing about the Jaguar XK is the sound, or the lack thereof. So this car has a wonderful sounding V8, which, when you can hear it, sounds lovely, but you really do have to strain to hear it. So there's a couple of honorable mentions, or dishonorable mentions if you want to call them that. Other things you're going to encounter when you have a car that's like a modern day vintage car. the occasional thing that breaks that is basically effectively unfixable. This car, the Bluetooth has never quite worked in the car. It didn't work when I got it. It worked for a couple of months, and then it stopped working. I've replaced the module, which is very expensive. Didn't work. It's very easy to replace the module, but for some reason, maybe it's a software issue, who knows, but it's effectively unfixable. I suppose if I gave it to the dealership with a blank check and all the time in the world, they could figure out how to fix it. But as far as I can tell, that's probably broken forever. So that's it. Those are the things that are disappointing about the Jaguar XK. Generally, of course, I own the car, so on balance, I like it. Actually, I like it a lot, and I'll probably be doing other videos on it. So if you like this type of content, keep watching. I'll have more content coming your way. And if you value exclusivity, please join, because like I've said before, it's a very exclusive club. I only have a handful of subscribers, so. See you next video. And if you're saying, hey, I can hear that car, I can hear that engine, it's because I have a very sensitive microphone. Just a few decibels louder might work.